Hey, Tricia.
Hello, welcome, welcome.
How are you doing?
I'm all right.
Good.
Hoping to survive the next few days.
Yeah, I know. Exactly. Right.
We have this slide up right now just until we get going, and then
I
we'll
see
take
that.
that off and go to us.
Perfect. Okay. Actually, I think this is being recorded, so I
It
hope I
is.
can clip that.
Hey, I've become an expert video editor, so I will delete all of this stuff, and if there's anything in the middle that gets messed up, I can fix that too.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you.
Thanks.
there.
Welcome, everyone. We're excited to have you all today. My name is Tricia Berry. I'm director of the Women in Engineering program, one of your hosts for today. Welcome to the Cockrell School Student Leader Conference, a student leader conference unlike any that we have had thus far. We're excited to welcome you all, to see all of you here. And while we would for sure prefer to be in person, we're still excited to connect with you virtually. And we've worked really hard to create this virtual experience for you to hopefully support you in your leadership role. Throughout this opening session, we'll use the Q&A function for your questions. You can use that to share any questions that you might have for today for this opening session. Thanks to all who submitted questions in your registration form for Dean Wood. We'll use those as well as we get to that portion of this morning. And if there are additional questions that come in that we are unable to answer at the time, we will make sure that we add those into Canvas. We've already added a number of responses to some of the questions that you had in Canvas in the discussion thread. So please be sure to check that out as well. So with that, we're going to kick off things today with Dean Sharon Wood. Dean Wood is the 9th Dean of the Cockrell School of Engineering. She is a member of the National Academy of Engineering and past president of the American Concrete Institute. She's been nationally recognized for her research on the earthquake response of reinforced concrete structures. And she served on federal advisory committees for the Department of Veteran Affairs, the National Earthquake Hazards Reduction Program, and the U.S. Geological Survey. As you might expect with someone with the title of Dean, Dean Wood has lots of leadership experience. But she's also sat in your shoes. She earned her bachelor's degree in civil engineering from the University of Virginia and her master's degree and doctorate in civil engineering from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. So with that, Dean Wood, the Zoom floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Tricia. It really is a pleasure to have everyone back on campus. I really wish I could see the 260 participants rather than just see a number and a list of names. But it is really good to be back and be starting our fall semester. I want to start off just with first off a request for you, and that is the university is doing asymptomatic testing as a way of trying to get baseline information about the status of COVID on campus. And they would like as many students as possible to volunteer for this. It takes about 10 minutes of your time. You actually sign up for a specific appointment. It's a saliva test. And so if you are willing to do that, that'd be greatly appreciated. And so I mentioned that, or we had a Dean's Council meeting today. And I thought this was a great way to get to inform the student leaders about this, and then B, maybe you can encourage some of the people in your organizations to participate also, because we have the capacity to test 5,000 people a week, but right now we're below those rates. So it'd be very, very helpful for the university if you could assist us with that. Tricia mentioned that I have been in your shoes. It's true, although unfortunately it's been quite a while ago. I think the thing that I've learned most about leadership since I graduated from college was the fact that a huge portion of leadership is listening. And I am hopeful that that's something you will take out of your leadership roles. What you're doing is you're really ambassadors for the school. So much of the of students' experiences is really extracurricular activities, and you are the ones who are guiding most of those. So I greatly appreciate the efforts that you're putting into these responsibilities. And if someone is interested enough to talk with you about something that bothers them, they have an issue, it means they really care. And so to listen and try to understand their perspective is a great way to start your path toward leadership. Another thing I really want to mention is we've been using the You Belong Here campaign, or the tagline, You Belong Here, for about 5 years now. And in the discussions I've had with many students this summer, I think it really comes true, right? I think sometimes if you are not a member of the majority, you feel, you can feel some pressure sometimes. And I think every single one of our students has earned the right to be a student in the Cockrell School. So every single one of you belongs here. And I have complete confidence that every one of you will be successful in your time here at UT. Now, you may have to work harder. It might not necessarily going to be easy, but you will come out of it stronger and you'll come out of it being a great engineer. So I have confidence in all of you, and all of you do belong here. Another thing that's exciting about this year is it is the 50th anniversary of our EOE program, Equal Opportunity in Engineering. So it has been a commitment of the school for a very long time. And we were hopeful that we were going to have a huge campaign and a lot of public things this year. Unfortunately, with the pandemic, that will be more subdued. But we will be trying to emphasize the important role that many students of color have had and alumni of color have had in the engineering profession. So please keep an eye out for that. And then just lastly, the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion website has been updated on our homepage. And so it has a lot of information about what's happening within the school, our responses to various groups over the summer. And within the next couple of weeks, next couple of days, I hope, we'll be posting our Diversity, Equity, Inclusion annual plan. So we want to be transparent with where we've placed emphasis and where we've made progress and where we still have a ways to go. So I'm hopeful that you will find this of interest. So I guess the last thing I wanted to mention is how I think we all have a shared responsibility to engage with people who don't look like us. So if I know we're not going to have as many casual conversations in the classroom, but it really is important, I think, as a student in particular, to understand different perspectives. I know when I was a high school student, I had a pretty narrow view of the world. I certainly didn't know many people who had who were not born in the U.S. In grad school, I got to meet a lot more international people. But that's something that I think is really exciting about a university, and having every single person reach out and meet a couple other people, try to make some friends to broaden your group. I think will do a good job for you in the long run. It's going to enhance your leadership abilities, but it also is going to make people feel welcome in the Cockrell School. And anything that we can do right now to reduce that feeling of isolation, I think is really important, because we tend to keep dividing up and dividing and coming into silos. And it really is important to try to broaden this as much as possible and broaden our friendships. And all of us have a responsibility to do that. So Tricia, I guess those are my introductory comments. Did you want me to answer some of the student questions that had been submitted, or are you just going to ask me questions?
We definitely want to have you answer some of these questions, so I can ask them to you, and we can start off with this first one that relates to how we're dealing with this pandemic. And you brought up some of the things to remind students at the beginning, which is great.
Yeah. So first thing, right, is everybody's got to wear a mask at all times if they're not in a private office. That's going to be a huge change. And I know that when I'm on campus, I don't like walking around campus with a mask, but we have to protect ourselves and the others around us. So that's the biggest change you're going to see. And honestly, not being able to see people smile, I think, is a huge problem, because you get so much interaction by the way people look at you and react to you, and the mask really hides a lot of that. So the pandemic, it's been like Groundhog Day this summer with planning, because we started off with one idea of how the university was going to operate. And at first it was only the 100 largest classes across campus that we thought were going to have to be online, because we didn't want to have densely populated auditoriums. So any class that had more than 100 students was going to be online, and we thought the rest would be in person. And that was kind of announced by the president in early June, and then all the cases spiked. And suddenly the faculty didn't feel safe, and many of the staff didn't feel safe. And we just realized that we had to be much more flexible and that we did not have the ability to control the pandemic was going to control us. So many of you, we will see that you have primarily hybrid classes. And as the situation with the virus changes, we should be able to have, we'll try to have more in-person opportunities for you, but at least at the start, we want to be pretty conservative. So that planning process really took a lot of time, and it's been so frustrating because we probably planned 5 times and then had to adjust all of those.
So related to that, we know that creating that community is really important within the Cockrell School. How are you helping, or what are you suggesting to keep maintaining that community during this virtual world that we're going to mostly be living in, at least this fall semester?
Right, it is a virtual world, and you know what? Our buildings will be open to students. Now they're going to look a lot different because actually the communications team, we just posted some videos of this. You'll see the EERC with 1 chair at each table, right? But we are expecting that students will come in and work in the EERC and our other buildings. So if your internet connection isn't working, you please come in and try to find a space. The university is also trying to put up, I think Gregory Gym is going to have a number of spaces. They haven't posted the official list yet. So I'm hopeful that we can have that kind of informal community. I think also what I've heard from the faculty is that they actually felt they could engage with the students more virtually because the barrier for engagement is less. Sometimes it takes a lot of courage to go to a faculty member's office hours and knock on their door and ask them a question. But if you can just put it in the chat box or type it in, I think many faculty commented that they felt they got to know their students better. So there are, as weird as it seems, there are some advantages, and I think we have to take advantage of the technology to do that.
Awesome. So we had a question, besides all of this handling of the pandemic and the virtual spaces that we're living in, which the students definitely recognize as a huge task, as you mentioned, all summer, we've been working on this. What are some of the biggest challenges for the Cockrell School this year? And maybe what are some of your priorities for this year?
So to be very honest, one of the biggest challenges is going to be the financial situation for the university. Because as we know, the COVID has really had a huge impact on the economy of the country and the state of Texas. Oil and gas revenue is way down, and most of the state's funding is coming from oil and gas taxes. So the legislature will meet in January. We're expecting to have cuts to the university, and we've got to start doing that planning right now. So that has been occupying our time and will continue to occupy our time probably for the next year. So that's probably the highest thing. I think another thing that was really important was when the university shut down, all of our research labs shut down. And so we had to find a way to get those grad students and researchers back into the labs, but do it in a safe manner. And I'm really pleased to say that now all of our grad students who are working in labs are back working, and we haven't had any cases. So they're taking it really seriously. They actually have cohorts. So some come in at 6 in the morning and some are working till 10 p.m. But it's been a change for everyone, but we're able to get it to work. So I think just the fact that we've been able to do some things like that shows me that our students are incredibly resilient, and we will find ways to make this semester work well.
Awesome. So related to that, our student organizations and our leaders that are all participating today in the Student Leaders Conference are always looking for ways that they can contribute and they can help. From your perspective, how do you think that they could perhaps better contribute to the Cockrell School? Do you have some suggestions for them?
I think it's going to be, this is hard because everything does have to be virtual. But I think just trying to have things be as normal as possible and have your meetings and get students excited about what you're doing. I think I know that usually when I walk around gone to engineering, the new students are so excited about all the opportunities they have here. And those opportunities are still there. They're just different right now. So we have put a pause to some of our student orgs that are physically based. We really want to make sure that for the first month, we don't have a spike in viruses. But I'm hopeful if we can get through that first bit, then we can start letting them have some physical contact and meetings, provided we do the same thing as we did with the grad students, right? We maybe have cohorts. We have only a certain number of people get to work at certain times.
Awesome. Yeah, it's a whole different world that our student leaders are having to navigate right now.
It really is. It's a completely different world, and I greatly appreciate everything that they're doing. Yeah.
So the next question relates to some of what you talked about with the diversity, equity, and inclusion plan. And the question comes in this way: your swift response to the NSBE demands sent a very supportive message, much differently from other university departments. And you mentioned here earlier in your remarks, the website and the diversity, equity, and inclusion annual plan that's coming soon. And we'll make sure that we share that out on the Canvas page for all of our student leaders, so you can easily find that. So the question is, what changes have been made in this past month with regards to the NSBE demands and improvements towards diversity and anti-racism?
So the first thing I'd like to say is that we did hire 4 faculty of color last year. And when we originally received the response, the request from NSBE, not all those had accepted. So I'm very excited that we do have more representation. We're at least moving in the right direction amongst our faculty. We also have been, we made a commitment that we would try to increase the outreach to attract more students to attend UT, more students of color. So we have made we're working with the DDCE, the Division of Diversity and Community Engagement. They have centers in Houston and Dallas, where we can work with them in the high schools. I might be reaching out to some of the students I hope will be helping us with this. So maybe they can go back and have virtual meetings with some of their high school counselors and that sort of thing. And then we also have Engineer Your World, which is a high school engineering program. And we've talked with them about reaching out to the teachers so that our students could go in and maybe, do a 15-minute question and answer. What's it like to be an engineering student? So those are things we want to work on right away. You probably haven't seen that the NSBE has a horn raiser right now to raise money for scholarships. So that's ongoing. We also have longer term efforts to increase funding for our diversity initiatives, and also create an emergency fund that's only for students in the Cockrell School, because we want to make sure that our students have what they need to be successful. And we know that technology costs are often higher in engineering. Let's see. I think I also made a commitment that leadership would attend student organization meetings, especially NSBE. But if there are other student organizations who would like to have a representation from leadership, I think just reach out. We're happy to do that. Can't necessarily do it. If you send a request today, I can't necessarily do it tonight, but providing that we're happy to do that. And then probably the last thing is there was a specific request about having a space identified or named after a prominent alumnus of color. We're in the process of identifying that. I think the other thing that has happened is we mentioned a lot about needing allyship, having more allyship. And I think I tried to mention that too, how all of us in leadership roles, including our student leaders, have this shared responsibility. But we will be holding a faculty workshop in January to work on some of this. And then I just wanted to let the students know that Vice President Leonard Moore, ran a course this summer over seven weeks, where he was talking about kind of Black history and the Black experience, which I'll be honest, I did not know most of this. And so we had over 60 faculty and staff members participate. I felt like I was a student again. I was doing homework, I was watching videos and reading, but it was incredibly important, I think, incredibly insightful for me. And I think it is important for us to have this broader perspective. So a lot of things have happened since we got that initial letter from NSBE. And I was actually so impressed with the professionalism of the way that we've been able to engage with them, because it could have been, it's been a very collegial exchange, and I think they're helping us work through some very difficult issues in the Cockrell School.
Awesome, thank you. And I'll just throw in there student leaders. One of the pre-student leader conference modules that hopefully you went through was the Ouch, the Stereotype Hurts module, which I think provides some good context about how, as student leaders, you can interrupt that bias and be that ally. So if you have not participated in that module yet, please do so. It's really quite well done. And there's a whole discussion thread of your peers, your other student leaders who have shared their thoughts and their comments and their feedback on that and their tips and strategies for interrupting bias as well. So please take advantage of that, because it really is up to all of us.
Tricia, I want to just emphasize how important it is that if you're alone and if someone says something to you that's really disturbing, having someone else back you up and put them on the spot, that is so important to make the person feel like they're part of the community, but also to try to change perceptions within our community. So I think it's fantastic that the student leaders are engaging in this and are taking it seriously. I think it's very, very important for our school to move forward.
Thank you. So let's flip back to this virtual space. So one of the questions was, how are we going to help make sure students don't feel like second-rate Cockrell School community members when you're studying remotely? And really a lot of those first-year new students who maybe are still at home, maybe in other time zones, and never got to physically move here after high school. What can we do to help them feel a part of this community?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, I know I have many colleagues whose children are making the decision to go to college or to stay home, and it's about 50-50. And I think that the things like FIGs are a really good way to at least get engaged. When you're going to class and you see your FIG members, right? You know someone who's physically in the class, but I think FIGs are going to be even more important now, because we have to build a community of people that we feel comfortable talking to. And it's hard to build that if you're in a huge group. So the FIG is a small enough group that you can actually get to know people. And it's interesting how my perceptions of Zoom have changed since I started, but I've actually learned how I can participate in Zoom. I can like text people, make snarky comments, and I feel as if I can have at least 75% of what I would be having in an in-person meeting. So I really do think that those are going to be important. And that's why I made the comment about having the student organizations continue to meet and continue to engage, and possibly have, just kind of open events. I'm planning to have more open events also, where just, I used to have the Dean study breaks. I'll have something similar as me virtual, but we'll find a way to do this as frequently as we need to make sure people feel like they're engaged. Yeah.
Awesome. I'm sure no one's having snarky comments in the chat right now.
No, don't do it in the chat. Do it on your phone.
Awesome. Well, I think, like you said, it's really upon all of us and our student leaders, all of you watching, have such a great opportunity to really create that community, especially for our new students as we welcome them in.
Right.
So I have one more question for you, okay, Dean Wood. So since this is the Student Leaders Conference and it's all about leadership, what have you learned as a leader during this pandemic, and what tips or strategies would you suggest to all of our student leaders as they head into this virtual environment this fall?
So I think the most important thing was related to that first question you asked me, Tricia, is no matter how well you think you've planned something out, this virus can just throw you a curveball. And so you need to be flexible. And I think too often at least I used to do this, right? You pull out, what did they do last year? And you say, okay, I'm going to do exactly the same thing. So being flexible, being able to change, and then listening to what people are saying. And maybe the third meeting of the year, you don't need a speaker, you need to focus on some allyship or something like that, right? So I think flexibility is going to be the key to leadership. I also think communication. What tends to happen is we have a strong leadership group within each of our student orgs, and you might have great discussions, but getting that out to engage more people is important also.
Awesome. Well, thank you. I think we all have a lot to learn, and we'll continue to learn as we go through. We're all Zoom experts. We're all getting to be experts on all of these different technologies. Well, thank you so much, Dean Wood, for joining in this morning to help kick us off with the Student Leaders Conference. I know we have a number of additional questions that have come in, and students, don't worry, we're going to keep adding those to the Canvas page and making sure that we get your answers, get your questions answered. There were a number around some of the logistics and the PPE and some of the processes on campus. So we'll make sure that we get that out to you so that you're fully informed, but you can also make sure that you share this with all of the others in your organizations and in your programs that you're involved.
So let me add one thing, Tricia, and that is,
Sure.
Let's say you get to campus and you realize you forgot your mask. The vending machines now have masks, hand sanitizer, and wipes. So, and I think actually there are other avenues to get an emergency supplies, but we're trying to help you with that also.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Well, again, thank you, Dean Wood. We appreciate it.
It's nice to see 283 people are here, and I really wish I could see your faces, but I hope we run into each other sometime during this semester. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. All right, student leaders. I am excited now to introduce to you Brittney Outlaw. Brittney is one of the forces behind the Student Leaders Conference and has been emailing all of you and helping us get Canvas set up. So I'm going to turn it over to Brittney.
Hey, everybody. So I just wanted to give a brief overview of our sessions today. So you're going to have several opportunities during our session after this keynote to learn from and connect with your peers. We hope that you take advantage of the knowledge shared in this session to think critically about your plans for fall 2020 and think about how you can help lead Cockrell into the 2021 school year. So in no particular order, we have several sessions available and you can choose any one to attend. So we have ethical leadership led by our familiar Tricia Berry from the Women in Engineering program, where you'll learn about the characteristics and strategies for ethical leaders and apply it to your experiences in the Cockrell School and beyond. Our other session is called Real Talk, How to Help a Friend in Distress. That's led by Michelle Emery from the Counseling and Mental Health Center, where you'll learn how to support your friends who are going through a difficult time. We also have a student panel called Words of Wisdom that I'll be moderating with Allison Bodner, where you'll hear directly from experienced student leaders about their experiences and tips for new leaders. And then next we have Empathic Leadership led by Anna Dyson from the Women in Engineering program, where you'll learn about and discuss how empathy relates directly to leadership. And finally, Michael Powell from the Engineering Career Assistance Center will walk you through career planning and job search in a virtual environment, where you can start thinking about navigating your career planning virtually. All of these sessions, Zoom links are posted in the SLC Canvas, as well as the hundreds of emails I've sent you over the last few days. And if you're having issues accessing it, we've found that sometimes entering in the meeting ID in the Zoom app works better. So you can try that. So from all of us in Engineering Student Services, welcome. We're so happy that you're here with us today. And I'm going to hand it back off to Tricia.
Awesome. Thank you, Brittney. Thanks again for everything. And hopefully now you all have a little bit of an idea of where you're headed after this session. So with that, I'm going to invite our fabulous panelists to join me with their video and to unmute themselves. We have three fabulous panelists who are joining us today. We have three amazing corporate partners who are helping to support our Student Leaders Conference and the work that you all are doing. I'm going to let each of them introduce themselves because they will be able to tell you a lot better than I can of who they are. But just quickly, we have Ree from Schlumberger. Schlumberger is our lead partner again for the Student Leaders Conference and has been a key partner in this effort for a good number of years now. Our longest standing corporate partner with the Student Leaders Conference. I'm also excited to welcome in Preetha from Capital One and Justin from Cirrus Logic, who are joining us as well as fabulous corporate partners. So thank you for joining us. Welcome, welcome. And with that, we are going to let you all, like I said, introduce yourselves. And as part of that, who are you? But then we also want to include, since this is our leadership conference, what has your leadership journey looked like? Let me start with Ree, if you're ready.
So good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kenebrew. I'm currently with Schlumberger, oil field services company. So I am in the business of oil and gas sector. So I've been with the company of 22 years, and I am an engineer from UT, a Longhorn chemical engineering I graduated from. And so my journey has been, not only am I an engineer, I've had a chance to move into other leadership positions, including training and development, including a part of health, safety, and environmental, as well as currently I am the HR manager for our region for North America. So I'm more than just an engineer. I have a few other things under my belt, but the engineering is definitely my basis and my core.
Awesome. Thank you. Preetha, let's go to you.
Hey, everyone. Preetha here from Capital One. Thank you for inviting me to this panel discussion. And I've been at Capital One for a couple of years. Have been an engineer. I've done my education, in computer science back in India, and really moved to the United States around 2002, and have been in this career field for 20 years and counting, right? So, yeah, like I always think of my leadership journey as, I've been in startups, I've been in leading technology teams as an engineer, really got into product development around 2010, and, worked for companies like Intuit, Capital One now, just building that empathy and, leadership journey in product development. For my customers, for my associates, and it's been an exciting journey. So thank you for having me here.
Glad to have you. Thank you. And Justin, let's hear from you.
Hi, Tricia. Thanks for hosting. And hello, everybody, virtually. My name is Justin from Cirrus Logic. Cirrus is a 1,500 person company here in Austin. We make mixed signal semiconductors for the most popular phones, pads, laptops, wireless headsets. We make about 5 million chips per day, believe it or not. There I'm the VP of Engineering Operations, which is a team of about 300 people, developing all the silicon and packaging technology that's used in our parts, and then validating the silicon when it comes back from the fabs and testing it, characterizing it, qualifying it, performing failure analysis, making sure the quality is strong, and supporting the sustaining manufacturing. My leadership journey started, I guess, when I was 15. I was actually assistant manager of a McDonald's in the Chicagoland area. I then moved, through high school, studied electrical engineering at the University of Illinois, and took my first engineering job in 1999 at Advanced Micro Devices here in Austin. I quickly moved to Silicon Labs and spent a few years there. And then, like some of the other speakers said, moved to a startup after that, which was great. A lot of engineers have a dilemma when they move into leadership of, are you going to be technical? Are you going to give that up and become a leader? Well, startup's great for that because you get to wear multiple hats and be an engineer, be a leader, and see what you like out of both of those roles. After we sold the startup to Broadcom, I moved to Cirrus Logic in 2013 and have been taking on various leadership roles there through today as the VP of Engineering Operations. Thanks. Yeah, happy to be here.
Awesome. So lots of different leadership experiences that our fabulous panel has. So again, students, you can throw questions that you have for our fabulous panelists in the Q&A pod. We will definitely have some time to go through some of those and pose those to our fabulous panelists. So my next question for our fabulous panelists, now that we know a little bit about who they are, is to dive into inclusive leadership. You heard the Dean talk a little bit about diversity, equity, and inclusion and some of the things going on within the Cockrell School. What does inclusive leadership mean to you? And how can one be an inclusive leader? What might our students think about? What are some tips or strategies for them that you might give to them about inclusive leadership? Ray, do you want to start?
So thank you. So inclusive leadership, one thing to think about is, I think the most important thing is understanding your team or understanding the people who surround you. When I think about inclusive leadership, I think about making sure everybody understands they have a seat at the table. They have a voice. And so to make sure that you tap into those right resources and make sure that everybody has that right vibe or that feeling, is you have to understand that team and what are their strengths and what are their weaknesses. We're not asking everybody to be all and have everything and all the knowledge. That's the whole point of being a team. But tap into those of an individual and make them understand that what you're saying or what you're bringing to the table or your ideas are important. It may not be the idea that we're going to use in the last resort, but at the end of the day, it is heard and we are talking about it. We're thinking on it and just understanding that you are a part of this team and you do have a seat and your voice is there. And so I think the most important thing about that is just understanding the members on your team and understanding what are they thinking and how are they feeling to make sure they're involved.
Justin, you want to continue with that?
Sure, yeah. For me, inclusive leadership is making sure everybody can provide their input and have their voices heard. You know, companies will have a policy of inclusion, but to me, this almost completely comes down to a leadership style. Are you asking people for input? Are you being an active listener or just waiting to talk? You know, new ideas are fragile and pretty easy to kill off, and you know, they need to be supported and you know, all great ideas obviously start as a new idea. And that process, you need to make sure people are supported and feel free to share their insight. There was a pretty popular Google study that came out a few years ago, where they studied what made the most effective teams at Google. It's called Project Aristotle if you want to Google it, I guess. And it wasn't about who, you know, the members of the team. It was really about how the team works together. And the number one trait shared by effective teams was a feeling of psychological safety or trust. You know, do people feel like they can share their ideas with their teammates? So, you know, some tips here would be an active listener, be present, you know, ask questions, you know, be authentic, transparent, and honest. You know, people make an environment where people feel safe sharing their ideas.
Preetha?
Yeah, you know, really, thank you, Justin. I think you've spoken a lot about, you know, just the feeling of belongingness that Ray spoke about. You know, Justin spoke about active listening. You know, that's the leadership style that I've kind of grown into, if you think about it, right? You know, so it's just that creating that seat on the table, the voice to be heard, you know, just the listening. One thing I want to share is take the time to bring everyone on that journey. You know, take that time to build the context. You know, as you're having these moments where the team is like engaging and talking, there will be you know, there will be times where you will have to kind of step in as a leader to set the context. You know, to give a history. You know, to also potentially talk about you know, the goals of the of why we are here together, right? Many a time it's you know, you have to kind of re-emphasize some of these you know, let's say principles, I think of it, you know, to kind of build that, you know, fun, engaging, where everyone is like sharing, talking, but then everyone feels safe as well. And you know, the diversity of these conversations really matter, because that's when you kind of take all this input, what you're building out of it, would be very rich, and it would actually be very applicable to potentially the customers that you're serving as well. So it just the team that you build, the team, the way you operate it, ultimately the output of the team, should translate into, our customer, and our customers are extremely diverse, right? So it's relentless focus on some of these key principles that will really, build inclusion in our teams.
Awesome, thank you. And I think as our student leaders in their various capacities head into the fall, I know that's going to be on their mind, because that is part of related to creating that community that we talked about with the dean. So thank you for your tips and suggestions. So let's talk a little bit about imposter syndrome. You all are leaders that have had this pathway to get to where you are. And oftentimes when we have a panel, you sometimes think, oh my goodness, these people have it all. They're perfect. It was an easy journey for them. Look at them where they are. Have you ever felt like an imposter in your leadership role or in your pathway? And if so, what have you done to get through that? And maybe we'll start with Preetha this time.
I was just, when I heard that, when it's imposter syndrome, right? I think anytime there's a change in role, frankly, I have felt it. So so you have to literally have I've heard of a 90-day plan to grow into a role, and that's been my mantra. And you kind of have to establish yourself. So, and what I mean by that is build those trust relationships. Really start, just listen and listen and listen, because you have to build that first, a trust relationship, to really understand certain themes, that you can work on. And once you've done that, then kind of dive deep, right? Again, when you're diving deep, the team has to to be very vulnerable to the team, to say, hey, this is what I'm thinking I want to dive into. I'm not I don't have the knowledge here, right? Can you help me? And what you'll see is those conversations start flowing. And hey, the reason why I'm in a leadership position is because I bring value, right? So recognize that, recognize the value that you bring in. For me, it's just a sense of leading the teams, for so many years, right? So understand the value that you bring in. At the same time, understand that, hey, this is something you will experience, just acknowledge that. But how do we, build that confidence in the team, in yourself? That's going to be an investment from your end, and it was from my end. And I kind of play by the 90-day rule book, to build that. And, and then start delivering, choose a moment, a theme that you want to dive deep in with the team, and start building a narrative. And as you deliver, soon you're going to have a portfolio of how you've led this team as well, right? And you will not be leading every initiative. You've learned the art of delegation as well. That's the other key thing that I operate on. So mixed bag of, doing a judgment call, where you are, in that team, and then kind of just creating, a path forward for your leadership, for your team as well, to really just flourish.
Awesome, thank you. Justin, imposter syndrome for you.
Yep, so I felt it. Lots of people are feeling it now with everything going virtual. And yeah, it tends to happen when there's lots of changes or people are taking on new roles. And what we've just experienced is a lot of change. And, even if you're trying to accomplish the same thing, you're probably, if you think about it, you're in a new role here virtually. If you're a leader who has high emotional intelligence or is good at reading body language or likes to manage by walking around. None of those things are easy now, and some are actually impossible. So that can lead to imposter syndrome as well, because you can't perform at your best potentially when you're all online. So what do you do about that? Remind yourself what the goals are. Think about what your values are. For me now, it's to support a team working remotely and making sure they can stay safe and healthy and come out of COVID, loving the company they picked to work for. But thinking about these goals and what really matters and making a plan around those can really help with imposter syndrome.
Awesome. Thank you. Bree.
I think it's similar to what Preetha and Justin has said. More importantly is that, yes, we all have faced it at some point in our careers of the imposter syndrome. I mean, every time we move in 22 years, all the different jobs, I'm gonna tell you going in, some of them are like, oh, yeah, I have no idea on how I'm going to get started. Or you come in behind someone and says they have it all, and how am I supposed to know this? But I think we've all been through it, and it is the most important thing is setting the goals, like, having a vision of what direction you should go. Preetha said 90 days. I have always said 6 months. By 6 months, I truly feel like, okay, now I know it. I know what's going on and you feel comfortable. But most important is don't get so overwhelmed by taking all of the pie at one time and trying to figure it out. It needs to be in slices, and set that vision and that direction and check. And don't be afraid to ask for feedback of how you're doing, but be able to expect what's going to come in return and, not have your feelings on your shoulders about it. But at the same time, establish a plan. But I always said 6 months. At 6 months, it finally clicks and say, okay, I got it.
So I think one of the takeaways there is that everyone experiences imposter syndrome in some form or fashion along the way. And student leaders, I think one of the things to keep in mind in your space is to recognize when you are having that imposter syndrome feeling and naming it and understanding that that is normal. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you aren't cut out to be a student leader. It's just you maybe have some things you need to figure out, some help you need along the way, some questions you need to ask. So recognize that we all feel it at some point, many points during our careers, and that's perfectly normal and okay. So thank you all for sharing your stories on that. I think we don't always talk about imposter syndrome enough. And again, we look to those ahead of us and think that they just had this easy path and they know exactly what they're doing, not realizing that most of the time we're just faking it. Just like I think many of us were on this webinar for the first time while we're live streaming with the dean and all of those things. And, we survive one way or another, we survive. All right, so I have another question for y'all. And I see some questions coming into our question and answer pod there. So thank you, students, for doing that. We'll get to those here shortly. So if you have some questions, throw them out. So my next question, we're going to start with Justin. What does ethical leadership mean to you? And how can one be an ethical leader? What are some tips or strategies that you would have for our student leaders?
To me, ethical leadership means fairness, honesty, openness, always doing the right thing no matter the cost. Those things probably sound pretty simple, but like most things, it can be pretty complicated. What about unconscious bias? How do you highlight that and make sure that that's not coming into play? If you're managing a large team, how do you figure out and deal with managers that might be treating their teams differently? Some might have a very high bar, some might have no bar. How do you make sure the team is being treated fairly? What about people with different definitions of what fairness is and how people should act? Having people you trust and a team to support you can help guide you to make sure that you're being an ethical leader and you're addressing these issues in a broader team. And creating an environment that's open, with open communication and lots of feedback can also help find and address any issues there might be that you need to address as a leader.
Fabulous, thank you. Preetha.
Yeah, for me, when I think ethical leadership, many time it's understanding the value of the company that that you're part of. That's a family that you're part of. Think of it that way. And for me, that Justin, you said it right. Do the right thing. Excellence are the two values that Capital One has. And even before I joined Capital One, that was something that I kind of looked at and said, hey, is it how does it match my view of the world, right? There has to be some kind of can I move into this family and feel like a part of the family, so that's kind of that's how I when I say ethical leadership emotionally, that's how I think of starting, and then it translates into the difficult part that Justin spoke about. So now it's like to live the values, right? Excellence, so engineering excellence. I'm in the engineering discipline, product development. So what does that mean? Really, that's where you need your teams to help, and and again, continue to, as we're striving and living out our values, continue to invest in in your teams, how they understand values, how do they live by that. So it's just uh, soon you'll realize that the entire team is like out there looking for each other, looking for the values of the company itself, especially around excellence and doing the right thing.
Great.
So ethical leadership, in my current role of HR, I think that's all that so part of the everyday lifestyle is the ethical leadership. But it's more or less, we have like a code of ethics, we have a blueprint, and it's following the guidelines or following the values of the company. It's instilled, it's a part of the DNA. But I think most important is what Justin said, it's the communication, making sure it's open. We all have different of opinions, but at the end of the day, it's still the values. And like Preetha say, it's a family. So how would you want that family to evolve? How would you, it's the same way you want this business. And the blueprint is laid. And so we just need to follow, and ensure that we're on the same page. Do what's right. Do what's internally, what you feel is the right thing to do.
Awesome. Thank you. So we also recognize, and y'all have mentioned this a little bit in some of your earlier examples, but we're all likely to experience a lot of struggles and failures as we are leaders in this virtual space. So how, as a leader, do you proceed if you're unsure about a decision or an action, or you mess up something along the way as a leader? Justin, you want to kick us off with that one?
Yeah, so as a business leader, you need to make sure and find a team of resources that you can trust. So, you should have a few off of your team, maybe a few peers that can help you with decisions. We're all human, mistakes happen, it's really how you learn from them. And in engineering, if you're not making mistakes from time to time, then you're definitely being too conservative and not taking on enough risk. If as a leader, your goal is to eliminate mistakes, then the team will emulate that, and you'll open up the door for any number of competitors or startups that are waiting there to take business from you. So really, your goal should be not to eliminate mistakes, but take appropriate risk. Be strategic about how you take those risks, and gauge, and over time, hopefully gauge those risks more accurately so you can predict, plans to deal with it, with failure there. But this all comes down to learning from your mistakes, trying not to make the same one over and over again, probably. But mistakes are a natural part of the process, and you wouldn't want to eliminate them completely. And it's one of the things that people go to startups for. A startup involves so much risk. Getting that on your resume and part of your experience really helps you in your career, because you get to see so much of that process. At a startup, you can probably see, decades worth of risk at a normal company compressed into a year or so. So, learning how to be comfortable with that process, learning how to hopefully gauge the risk more accurately, those will all help you become a much stronger leader.
Thank you. Bree.
So it's the true statement that we're all going to make mistakes, and we're human. But at the end of the day, I think what's most important is that you not only learn from them, but it's okay to admit that a mistake was made. I mean, there are going to be some times where, you know, we put a lot of work and effort into something and it just wasn't the right direction. And you have to take ownership of that and admit you were wrong. And it's okay. It just shows that we went out there, you tried, you know, it didn't work. And it's okay to say, I made a mistake. Let's try it again and let's do over. And I think that's the most important thing. A lot of us don't want to be seen as the failure. But if you don't learn from the mistake, or, you know, there's always going to be a message or something to gain from it. And it's okay to say, I was wrong. And we've had it as we're going through these virtual times. There are decisions that have been made. It's like, okay, that's not the right decision. It looks good at the time, or something looks good on paper. But when you actually start to put it in action, you know, a lot of times with the well site, it looks good when we did the paper version. But now that we're actually at the well site, this is not how it's operating. And so you have to change it and say, I made a mistake, and it's okay. And we learn from it, and we hope not to do it again, but we learn.
Thank you. Preetha.
Yeah, just want to echo Justin and Ray. We all make mistakes, right? We all have our struggles. It's just how, and it's, for me, I've always noticed, if we don't take risk, and if we don't push the boundaries of what the product can be, what the technology that we can build on, right? If we don't push those boundaries, we're going to be stagnant. That's one thing. But then by pushing the boundaries, we're going to have our struggles, because when we start pushing, it's a green field, right? And we have to build something that's completely, potentially your competitors have not done that. Other teams have not done that. But you'll have to kind of lead the way. And when you're doing that, you're going to have your unique struggles. You're going to have your team with you, and you're going to have your failures, right? What's important is, first understanding it, and then coming back and then sharing it more broadly as well, right? That's one thing that I've followed. Sharing your struggles, your failures, building that again. So you're helping other teams, right? Stand on your shoulders, for example. I've done that myself. I stand on the shoulders of other teams. It's a way of giving back. So that's one rule. The other one I want to also say is, keep, in my career, the way in my leadership journey, I've always taken, I've never been afraid to kind of go and take on new roles, new projects. That kind of defines me actually as a person and as a leader. So, and then you're going to be the same cycle, right? So it's an interesting, journey, and you've got to love it. That's one thing. And then you got to swim with the waves, so to speak, right? So, yeah.
Awesome. And I think this goes back a little bit to that creating a community and supporting our new students coming in, and how you all as student leaders can help them understand that the struggle is real in Zoom classes and connecting with each other and all of these things, and that it doesn't have to be perfect, but we can all figure it out together and make a better experience, make ourselves better leaders as we go along. So thank you all for sharing that. I'm going to go over to the questions that are starting to come in on our Q&A panel. And so the first question that I'm going to ask to you all, and any of you are welcome to kick it off. How do you see industry changing in the long term because of these effects of COVID-19? And will virtual working skills become more valuable as we move forward? And I see Bree has taken herself off mute, so I'm gonna let you go first.
Oh, I was just being prepared. It wasn't first, but actually, when COVID came around, we actually sent a survey out to our employees. And we asked the question of, how is it going for you right now, being away from the office and being virtual? We also asked the questions regarding, if you were to return to work, what would make you feel more safe? What would make you feel more comfortable? When we got the results back, of course, people say I'm more fit, I'm more healthy, I work out more, but some of those have missed being in the office and that closeness of the team. And, like some of those like to be face to face, having the conversation, where others have said, I'm enjoying the virtual space. I don't really want to come back to work Monday through Friday. I actually want to only work maybe 2 days from the office, and the rest of the time is virtually from home, or not at all. From now on, 100% virtual space. And so as a company, we're trying to figure out, we've consolidated a lot of offices, and we're thinking about, it won't be back that Monday through Friday. It may be just that 2 days a week or 3 days a week. And depending on what you're doing, it may be from home for the rest of the time. It's just changed a new perspective on the job, where most people thought, oh, the person has to be productive to be in the office. This COVID has really proven that that's not true. The employees are effective, or some are even more effective now that they're working from home. Yeah, we'll see now the school year has started. We're all at home now, though in school, how that feels. But at the end of the day, the survey that we did showed that most people are enjoying it. This is what they want to do. And then the direction going forward is that we will continue with this minimized work week in the office, and we'll do more working from home.
Awesome. Justin or Preetha?
Yeah, so there will certainly be a lot of interest in alternate work styles or environments and people working from home. One of the things that I've seen, interestingly enough, this year is when we first in March, when everyone switched to working from home, there were lots of people saying, "Hey, can I just work from home forever?" Pretty much. Now that it's July, August, there's lots of people saying, "Hey, when can I come back to the office?" And if you do a good job building a strong company culture, people miss each other. They want to be together. So, I think there was a fantasy of like, "Hey, I can just get up in my pajamas and start working, and not have to commute in a car." But in reality, people are they're social. They want to be together. And if anything, it'll just be extra flexibility and figuring out how to manage complicated engineering projects where you still provide an extra level of flexibility. And a couple other thoughts. There's when everybody's online on Zoom, you get a certain engagement and style, but if you think about how that's going to be when half the people are on Zoom and half are in person, there's going to be some interesting struggles there. So I think, like a lot of things in engineering, this will be a data collection and maybe some experimentation before we figure out the exact way to run a successful business once we're past this.
I think, a lot of themes were covered in the sense that, I think every team and potentially every company would have its own, we are conducting surveys in Capital One as well. We are kind of, like when I joined the team, the new team in a remote manner, so I had to pick up skills to provide leadership, technology leaderships from a remote way of working. And so those are the skills that you need to pick up, I think, going forward, especially if your company might be in a, it could be in a, like Justin said, right? There could be a hybrid model, so to speak. And so this is all like, but the voice matters. So please keep sharing how working from home or Zoom is impacting you, because I think that's the data that we need to kind of keep adjusting and keep, at the same time, this is just amazing data, because what we feel is again, I'm getting into product development, because that's what your customers are feeling as well, right? And there's just so much. This is just a new way of working. Our life has changed, right? I think understanding that fundamentally, and that it's going to be, we don't know what it's going to be exactly, but we're going to reach there. To have that complete confidence, but you need to have that voice on the table as well.
Fabulous, thank you. So another question comes in, and I'm assuming this is coming from one of our student organization leaders. We heard the dean talk a little bit earlier about financial implications of COVID-19 and decreased funding that might be coming in from the state. And our student organizations are definitely dependent upon companies and others to support them in the work that they do. So the question is, how should student organizations who exist to do those hands-on projects and things maybe in person, and I'll even extend that question to really any of our student organizations that have those meetings, how do they show that value? How do they, still convince companies to support them as they go into this school year in this virtual space? Anybody?
I can start, I guess. So, one thing to keep in mind is we all know this is a pretty difficult time right now. So I'm pretty sure you'll find that your corporate partners are sympathetic to your situation. So, don't hesitate reaching out and explaining some of the difficulties you're having and ways they might be able to help you. But you first asked about the engineering leadership and then kind of extended that to all. But in particular for engineers, I mean, part of what you're studying is how to be creative and problem solving, try to figure out how to do that virtually. And, maybe going back to the mistake thing, maybe it's a spectacular fail, but you're going to learn from that. And, you're going to look back on this time and think, man, I can't believe I lived through that. And, try to find ways to work around it and get creative. And, I'm sure you'll find some great ideas there.
One thing is all of us are learning here. This is not something that we have been there, done that. Everyone is learning together. So, just like companies are learning to understand what does this mean, right? How do we evolve? How do we still stay leaders in what we're doing? Technology for our customers. So everything is new and everything, we're just in a mode of understanding, and this is a great time for innovation, for problem solving, for even identifying what problems there could be, right? So I would just say, let's keep the communication going, and because we definitely want to hear, and there will definitely be opportunities because of that.
So I think it's that we're all in the same situation, right? We understand that there are hands-on projects, and I think the best thing is that we've developed this relationship with student organizations at UT, and we want to continue. And this is just a bump in the road. It's just a snapshot in time. And so the relationships are still there. It's just the communication. Hey, we have these projects, and we may be able to offer funding. Some of the corporate leaders may be able to offer funding, and some of them may not, but at the end of the day, it doesn't end their relationship. You want to make sure you keep that communication open and make sure that you understand it may not be opportunities today, this month, right now, but come January, February, things change. It's just that this is a snapshot in time. And so communication is key.
Fabulous, thank you. So this question I'm going to pose to Bree and to Preetha. So Justin's going to sit out on this one. The question is, what are some hardships you've encountered as a minority in industry? And I'm going to extend that to say, what are some opportunities? What have you been able to do in this space?
I can take that first. So one thing is, trying to understand the rhythm of the team that you're working with. I definitely, I think everyone does that, but I think as a minority, as a woman in technology, that's something that, I kind of pay very real, I kind of invest, I make it a priority from my end, but what I want to say is, you have support. I have other women in technology standing by me. Tap into it, right? tap into allies, there is, and then it is just at that point, it just starts, and then you start focusing on just the, just because of just the support model that I have, I'm able to and that's where, I think we need to kind of nurture that support model, but also tap into it again and again and again, so that we are able to just at some point, it just becomes, for me, it's how do I say it? Lost for words. But then for me, I translate that into, once I have the support model, once I've understood the operating rhythm, and it just becomes then, I'm just a voice at the table. I'm just a leader. It just becomes like, hey, I'm just there's just a fall. I'm just able to do my work, and do it effectively. So, and if there are any hiccups along the way, again, the support model. For me, I cannot stress enough on that. So, but I take a responsibility in nurturing it as well. So that's very important to me. Just like So keep being engaged and nurturing it, because that is key to really enabling my work to be effective in my work.
Thanks, Ree.
So for me, I would think it was my, 22 years ago, you couldn't find very many women who worked on the oil rigs. I was the lady who worked on the rig, right? And my first assignment, I was the first person of color who had ever lived in that town. And so it was a new attraction. Hey, look at me. I'm the girl who's on the rig, and I'm the first person of color. Surprise, But at the end of the day, it's a lot of hardships, as being the first or not many. But it was important to find that support structure who can help you along the way. And it's called, for me, it's called developing your board of directors. It's your own circle around you who can help guide you. And they shouldn't be the people who are just like you or who look like you or maybe have the same interests. It should be the people who are not afraid to tell you no, or not afraid to tell you, hey, this is not working or this is what you can improve, but also give you that support. But most importantly, as we go through these hardships, the opportunities are we're able to teach people something different, see something different about ourselves, or our creative side, or new ways of thinking about things. But the best thing is that for all the hardships that you may have endured, you reach back to others who are coming up and you help guide them and let them know the lessons learned are the best practices, or, hey, I know you're going to find your own way of doing things, but these are things that we've encountered, and maybe you can look at these pitfalls or things that we've gone through that we don't want you to go through the same, but show you how to do better than what we've done before. So I think that's the most important thing as we have these hardships of being the minorities, are coming into something new, is reaching back and letting people understand this is what has gone through, but you don't have to follow these same footsteps. You can do something different, and this is how you can help them. So those are opportunities that come out of that, as well as teaching others. There are differences, and it's okay to be different.
Awesome. Thank you. So we got one more question, and then I'll come back to my final question for y'all. One more question from our student leaders. So as student leaders, they're going to be seen as mentors for many, especially all these new students coming in. The question is, what's the best way to reach out to those who are scared, or maybe those who are not used to reaching out for help? What tips might you give our student leaders to reach out to those who might not know or be comfortable asking for help?
So you have some topics for the breakouts on empathy, right? I think, if you're one of those people who's likes mentorship, if you could, think about people you may know that you think might need some help, reach out to them. I mean, it's, Dean Wood commented that that's even easier now that it's Zoom. You can, you don't even have to get out of your chair. You can try reaching out to people. So, if you can think about people that might need some help or support, and reach out to them. Everybody's having difficulties in this time, and we need all the support we can get. So if you can, spend some extra time thinking about people you can try to help, and just see if they need anything, check in on them, try to make sure that they know that there's people there to support them.
So, when someone, like, when, let's say you have the perception, right, you're a mentor and you feel like someone's scared or, not used to asking for help, really, as a mentor, kind of understand, first is building that awareness, right, that this is happening, in that relationship. And at that point, once you build that awareness, then you can kind of have a couple strategies or tools. One is kind of potentially reaching out, without like one-on-one, to kind of get that input, to continue building that, to strengthen that voice, right? Because at some point, at some point you want that voice that is potentially scared today to feel comfortable, and to kind of voice the opinion in a broader setting. And you could find that there are other, I think I call it there could be other skeletons in the closet. There could be something else happening in the team, or dynamic wise. So it's just like, when you're a mentor for someone, and when you encounter these situations, it will happen, and we need to figure out how to support again, because that's our role and our responsibility, and kind of and then ease it out for the rest of the team as well.
So I would say that first and what's most important is to make sure that individual understands that you're approachable. You have that feeling, or you give off that sense of it's okay to talk to that person. It's okay that to show my weaknesses in front of that person. I don't want to be seen as vulnerable, but it's okay that they're not going to judge me. And so, approach them, and it's okay. Sometimes it may be in a team environment that you're approaching the whole group, where you're not just singling anybody out, because somebody can shy away when you just single them out. But as you get to know that person, or know the audience, or whoever you're targeting, then maybe that individual one-on-one. But I think most important is to let those individuals know that, it's okay to approach me. I do have that side, or that sense, where I am caring. I do care, and I want to know what's going on. And it's not about me, but it's about you.
Fabulous. Well, I'm going to come to my last question as we wrap this all up for our fabulous student leaders in our kickoff session. So what have you learned as a leader during this pandemic? And what tips or strategies would you suggest for our student leaders as they head in to lead in this environment throughout the fall semester? Who wants to go first?
All right, I guess I can go. So one of the things I learned is what you brought up earlier: imposter syndrome is real. I've heard about it a lot more the last few months, and a lot more people struggling with it. I've also learned that as a business leader, I always knew this, but it just doubles down on the fact that the team is what counts. Everybody has different circumstances, challenges with virtual work. If you can support them, make sure it's clear that supporting them is the number one goal of the leadership team, and nothing's above their health and safety. They can step up. The team can step up and do amazing things. Some tips with how to support virtual work and pandemic is, can you separate out the different activities? Maybe for me it's working versus home life or whatever, but trying to have some sort of schedule, being present when you're online with your community, making sure that you're thoughtful about what your goals are, and just thinking about values and things like that can really help you work through this times we're living through. Thanks.
So, one thing that I've learned in COVID, when all of us are working remote, is, really, all of us were at like step zero, right? Everything was new. Everything was upended. The team had to kind of come together again. So really building that empathy for the new way we are working, on the balance that every associate needs. That they have, like, for example, I'm very sensitive that someone has, someone's homeschooling their kids. I'm very sensitive to not have meetings at 5 p.m. Right? Very sensitive to the fact that lunch is sacred. You want to potentially, there could be other, for me, I cook for my family, between 12 and 1, make sure there's lunch on the table for my kids, so they can have. So just the, be aware with everyone's like starting at step zero. And as we build and learn about each other and start operating with a certain rhythm, one thing that I've learned is many times, and we had to do this intentionally, maybe couple months back, when we did like a pulse check around the team. Hey, how is this working out for you? One thing that we were not so great at having fun. So we were like, okay, we want to have fun every week. We want to have jamming sessions. We just log into a Zoom call, we just play music, nothing else. So I think those really just the how to be effective working remote, and what is the code, for your team. And you have to kind of set it all up, and it's all new. We're all learning in this together. So all hands on deck sometimes. So I think as a leader, I've had to give that space to my team to kind of express and for us to grow together, including myself. So that's something that I've learned.
So, and during COVID, learned that definitely being flexible. And we're all starting, as you said, from scratch. We're learning. And what I found with my team is that it was starting to be a little bit more stressful because, everybody's trying to work from home. It seems as though there was no boundaries. They were working from early in the morning to late at night. And so, if we wouldn't have meetings and communication, you wouldn't have known there was no coffee breaks anymore. So, you're sitting at the computer the whole time. And you're also trying to balance with the family being at home. And so what we did incorporate is what you said, Preetha, it's fun. It becomes such a task, and I start seeing people more stressed out about it. That the fun things, what little known facts do you know about your team? Did you really know? So we like human bingo. We have like certain weeks, at lunchtime. They want to take a lunch break. I asked them, you want to spend time with your family in silence, or you want to do something with the team? But because they wanted that team interaction and more of that FaceTime, they prefer to do it then. Every other Friday, we have like virtual happy hour, where you get a chance to bring in your families. And I see the kids, and if that's what you want to showcase or whatever. But it's an opportunity just to bring fun back into work and not just be so stressed out about doing the day-to-day and getting it done. It's more of, I know you have a personal life outside of this job. And I know that family is very important to you. And so how can we incorporate that into day to day? And I'm not trying to make it more stressful than it already is. We're all going through the same things and we're going to work through it together. And so the flexibility and bringing the fun back into work was the most important thing, especially now during these times.
Fabulous. Well, oh my goodness, what great tips and strategies and stories and things that you all have shared with our fabulous student leaders. And what a great kickoff to our student leader conference and lead into the next sessions that we have this afternoon. So thank you again to Ree and Preetha and Justin for joining us. Thank you again to our fabulous lead partner, Schlumberger, and our fabulous partners, Capital One and Cirrus Logic, for supporting the Cockrell School Student Leaders Conference this year in this crazy virtual brand new world where we're all trying to figure it out as we go. As just a couple of reminders to all of our student leaders, our breakout sessions start at 1 o'clock. Don't forget to check Canvas for all of those links. I heard that Zoom is back online again after a frantic morning this morning of, I think, Zoom crashing across the country. That's what happens when all universities across the world hop on Zoom on the same day. but we're all flexible and we figure it out and here we are. So check Canvas for those links. Share on Canvas. There are a lot of discussion boards and additional resources. So please make full use of that and continue to ask your questions, and we'll work hard to get those answered in there for you. So with that, thank you again, Justin and Preetha and Ree. Thank you again, Schlumberger and Capital One and Cirrus Logic for all of your support. Have a fabulous rest of your day and a fabulous year as a Cockrell School student leader. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have
Thanks.
fun.